Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I am Lauren Stein, the implementation manager here at Acctivate, and today we're going to have a Q&A session. Before we get started with the questions submitted prior to this webinar, I wanted to give you a heads up that 10.3 has officially been released and added to our main downloads page on the help site, and I will show you where that is towards the end of the webinar. Alright, so to get started, we're going to begin with business alerts. I had a question come in about reminders and how to complete them. They were wondering, how does someone know that a reminder has been completed? So when it's been completed, you'll see the completed note on the window it was created and a green check mark with completed listed in bold. If they're watching their reminders on business alerts, you can give certain users the ability to view other people's reminders, and the ones that are not in the list are completed when the due date is set to any time. If you have the due date set to a specific date, you may not be seeing some of the open ones because they're not within those parameters. So let's take a look at Acctivate real quick. And I've got the business alerts window open already. All the reminders you see here are open and assigned to the Floyd Harris user. I have access to see everybody's reminders here, but like I said, in configuration management, you can restrict that per user. All of these reminders you see here are open because I've got the due date set to any time. And you can click through here to see each reminder, who added it, and who the follow-up is listed as. In my demo company, it looks like I'm the one who's added and assigned them all to myself, but obviously you can have a different added by and follow-up user on each one. So you can either complete it from here by checking the checkbox on the left-hand side, and then you can see here that it adds this checkbox with a completed stamp. If we refresh, now that goes away because it's been completed. You can also double click on the note and add your own notes to this, and then check the completed box on this open note window and save and close. And then if you wanted to open the specific screen or window that it's listed on, you can click at the bottom here. We've got this customer Abercrombie and Smith, and that will open the window that the note is listed on. This is listed on the customer credit tab, and you can see that it's got this open one, and you can go ahead and complete that by opening it and checking the completed box. So to see completed notes, you'll need to be on the specific window that note is linked to, and you can see that here. Also, if you refresh this reminders over here, it's no longer there. So we also had a question about multi-level assemblies in Acctivate. So in business alerts, you have the ability to create assembly sessions from the assemblies tab. These can be created based on sales orders or available quantities, kind of like the reorder wizard. So for those of you using multi-level assemblies, you would create the sessions based on what's listed on sales orders, so the final good that you're selling to the customer, refresh the assembly screen, and then do another round based on the availability of the components that are listed on those final assemblies if those are sub-assemblies. So you would run through that step each time to create each level. So you need to do that however many times based on how many levels that you have in your assemblies. And then when you're going to post those sessions, the newest session number will be the lowest level of the subassembly. So you would work backwards to have enough quantity on hand to build the final good being sold to the customer. Now this new functionality has also prompted adding another option to the reorder wizard. So we'll show you that once we get into Acctivate. So as I said, we now have an assemblies tab on the business alerts window. And right now we've got on open sales order and below minimum stock quantity checked. We're going to leave those checked so we can only see what's listed on orders as well as what's below its stock quantities. So I've got one assembly to build this brownie mix, and this assembly is comprised of a subassembly to create a batch. This is what we covered during the webinar last month for processing assemblies, or maybe 2 months ago. So the brownie mix, again, has a component that's an assembly, and so we would need to create an assembly session for what's being sold. So if we open this product, we can see that we've got 5 on hand and also 5 on back order. So we have -5 available. And the components has the brownie mix batch, which we don't have any on hand. So just to keep with that example that I was talking about, we would check this box, or however many boxes you would need to check to create that top level assembly. Create the assembly session. That's going to create it with the suggested quantity of 5. And now if we go back to this window, if we uncheck on open sales orders, now we also have this brown mix batch product. And so we're going to go ahead and check this. So this is us creating that subassembly. I'm going to go ahead and create coffee French roast as well, because let's say we want to go ahead and do that as well in the assembly session. And I don't want to do the whole 149, I want to do 130. And you can see that's red. That's because it's below the suggested quantity. All right, and then we're going to create assembly session here. There's one warning. That's because we're not building what's being suggested. Yes. And then this assembly session is created. So you would go through that process for each level, and then let's say you're wanting to go back and open those assembly sessions on their own, and you wanted to post it one level at a time. So that's when you would go to inventory assemblies. And in this session list, you would want to pick the newest session, because that's going to be building the lowest level of that assembly if you're creating these sessions based on the minimum stock quantities. So it's more of like based on demand versus based on just wanting to build it for stock. All right, and then let's go back to business alerts. Like I said earlier, since we've broken out the assemblies into their own tab to create the assembly sessions, the reorders tab now has a hide assemblies checkbox. And we added a checkbox instead of completely removing the ability to reorder assemblies, because some of our customers can order a complete final good from their vendors if for some reason they didn't want to build it in-house. Maybe one of their machines broke down or something, and so instead of doing it in-house, they're going to order it as a whole unit. Or maybe one of their components is on back order and they're not going to, it would be quicker just to order it complete. Even though it might be more expensive to order it complete, it would be quicker to get it out to their customer to order it as a whole unit instead of the components and then take the time to build it. So you can check or uncheck that based on your need. And we're not going to go through the whole reorder wizard here. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of this option to hide assemblies and show assemblies. All right, and then so for the customer section of Acctivate, there were a couple of questions related to restricting user access on the customer window. In version 10.3, we actually broke out the ship to modification user permission from the account management permission. This gives the administrator of Acctivate the ability to restrict users to only be able to update the ship to locations without having access to other account information if they're able to change things on the customer window. So let's take a look at this in Acctivate. And to do so, we go into configuration management. And we'll go to user information. You'll expand the specific user that you wanted to restrict or grant access to, and it's going to be found in the customer section for the permissions. So we've got maintain ship to addresses and maintain account information. So this way you can restrict them, maybe a salesperson, you don't want them to update the account information, you want to set that to maybe your accountant or somebody else, but you want them to be able to add ship to locations in case your customer has a new physical location that you can ship product to or anything like that. So they would be able to have access to only update that if you needed it to be that way. Another question that came in asked the difference between branch and job. So branches tell Acctivate which accounts receivable account, sales discount account, and currency to use for the customer. It's also a way to set a specific warehouse related to that location, a default on sales orders for normal and special order stock. And then some customers also use this to assign their QuickBooks class tracking list to, because they've got their branches based on locations as well as their QuickBooks classes. So they want to assign that so they can run that P&L by class in QuickBooks and see that breakout on that report. And so jobs are considered a customer record related to a parent. So when you create a new job, it's created as a customer record in both Acctivate and QuickBooks. And then creating a branch doesn't affect QuickBooks because it's really just a way to assign GL accounts and some of your lists to a specific location. And one cannot be changed into another. So they're not interchangeable things in Acctivate. So since we're in Configuration Manager in Acctivate, let's take a look at the branch section. So that's going to be under Customer and then Branch. And so you can see we have, we could potentially have a different address, phone, fax, email. We also can assign accounts receivable accounts to the branch. If we hit Edit, you can see that if we scroll over to the right, we actually have a different accounts receivable account for Dallas versus Fort Worth. So this gives us the ability to break out the receivables based on the different locations that you're selling out of. You can also have a specific invoice discount GL account to use for whole order or whole invoice discounts. And then we also have branch defaults for a default physical warehouse and also a default warehouse specifically for special orders. A lot of our customers that have special orders, they separate that stock into their own warehouse just to make sure that that stock is completely separate from their main stock. And then we also have, I've got the option to track QuickBooks classes based on branch. So you also have this class selection here down below. And this class name comes from your QuickBooks class tracking list. And we've got Dallas versus Fort Worth from QuickBooks. Also, another note is that you can save your company logo in branch. And so this gives you the opportunity, if you have different logos for those different locations, you can add them as for each branch, and they can be different for each one. Just keep in mind that the reports that do print your logo, if the logos are a different dimension, you might want to have a different version of the report, or add some white space to one of the logos to make sure that the dimensions are the same, because the logo will be printed in the same dimensions regardless of what the dimensions of the actual logo is on the report. All right, and then if we take a look at customers, which is where you actually assign the branch, you'll see that if we filter on customer job name, I have a job 123 for customer ABC. And if I open that record, the job name is 123. And this is going to be created as a customer in QuickBooks whenever you run a sync. And it's going to be under the parent customer of ABC. And so you can see here that branch is just a category to assign to that customer. It's not related to the actual job. Like, it's not a unique identifier that's going to be created in QuickBooks. Another question came up on where do you see emails when you send emails to your customers? So the answer to that question actually depends on where you sent that email from. So in Acctivate, if you send an email from the customer window, so let's say I'm over here and they had an email address listed in this email field. If I click this here, I'll go to another customer. Looks like ABC doesn't have one either. So we'll do bob@example.com. And now we can click this email icon, and that'll pull up the email window, and you can send them an email. And when you send it, so let's just say, we're not going to send it, but we're going to save it. And when we save it, it will show up on the email tab on the customer window. But if that email was sent or saved on a sales order, then you'll only see that email on the sales order window. So if we open one of ABC's sales orders, we can see the same thing happen over there. Let me add an email. and we'll say email order, which will add the PDF copy of the order. And again, you can have message templates that you could use for this, as well as setting default message templates, which we'll get in here in a second. And again, we're going to save it instead of sending it. And now you'll see that email on the email tab for the order window, because that's the place that you actually sent the email from. Now, if you're just saving them and you're not sending them, this box will be unchecked. So you can open this window and then send when you're ready. Maybe you could use that as a draft, or if you wanted to use that as a way to track some notes or something, if you didn't want to put it on the notes tab, you could do that. But any email that has been sent will have this box over here checked. All right, and so the next question that we received was in regards to the prices tab on the customer window. They asked why the description didn't default on screen. The answer to that is actually because the prices tab doesn't have the product description listed, so you won't see it there. But if you're assigning a customer specific product ID, you can also assign a customer specific product description on the product IDs tab of the customer window. So let's take a look at the prices tab in Acctivate versus the product ID tab. And that'll be on the customer window. And you can see over here on the prices tab, the only product, there is no description. So we've got contract ID if you had a customer contract set up on this contract tab. You have product ID, the price code, which it's going to be an exclamation point on this customer window, the price or percent, unit, price type, effective, expiration dates, low and high quantity, if it's a category specific price, and a note. So maybe it was getting confused with the note field, but you won't see the product description on this window. Now, if you are assigning a customer specific product ID, you would do so on the product IDs tab. And so to add that, you would hit edit. I can type in A121, hit tab. As you can see, the default product description shows up here automatically. I don't have to type it in. And then we can give it a customer product ID. Let's say they call it A121 EA. And then their customer description is glass cleaner each. So that's where you would have to actually type it in. And so for those of you that are using EDI or something like that, this is where you would assign those customer product IDs if your EDI provider or your trading partner is only sending their unique product IDs rather than the product IDs that you have in Acctivate internally. So sales, we were asked how to only invoice complete orders. We don't have an option to restrict the ability to invoice whenever an order is fully scheduled only, but you can manage this through Order Manager. So to do this, you can use workflow status to manage and prepare invoices from the workflow statuses view. So let's open up Order Manager. And we can do workflow statuses. So let's say you utilize a shipping workstation, and when you process shipments, the workflow status is set to shipped. And we'll, based on that, you can see the status of the order, or not the status, but the status of the lines of the order. It doesn't look like we have any workflow statuses assigned in this demo company, so we'll toggle to the sales order view and scheduled. So you can see here that all of the orders that have this green dot next to them are fully scheduled, so those would be complete orders. So what you would do is you can sort by this and then check the green orders only, and then go to action, prepare invoices, and this will prepare invoices for anything that you've selected. And once again, this would be a way for you to limit what's being invoiced by only checking the ones that are completely green. All right, and then within the sales topic, we were also asked about the difference between service and sales orders. Service orders are created via the business activity module and can be billed via the service billing module. They're normally comprised of time and materials to complete a project rather than created manually on the sales order window. The service orders also have another list of forms that you can print that break out time and materials into their own sections. This makes it look more like something you would get when you have repairs done on your car rather than ordering something online that lists just exactly what the products that you've ordered. And the order manager window actually separates out sales versus service orders. So you could toggle this view to be service orders. And actually, if we go back to sales orders, you can see, we have to open the actions. You have this full list of actions: schedule, unschedule, print sales order, print pick tickets, print pack list, emailing those forms, preparing invoices, shipments, creating assemblies, all that amazing stuff. Now, if you toggle that view to service orders and go to scheduled, those actions change. So we still have schedule, unschedule, but now it's print service orders, which here's the difference. You can have a service order and then you have a time and materials split, and then the same emailing, preparing invoices, shipments, assemblies, and then changing workflow statuses. So the forms are different, and also the way you create them is different. So if we go to business activity, we'll open the activity related to this so we can see the time and materials that's being billed. And then you can actually, from the business activity, do create service order for anything that's unbilled, or through activity billing wizard, you can actually bill either the customer as a whole, or you can bill per activity, or even go as granular as specific lines within each activity. Okay, so the next topic came from a question about creating special and dropship orders. They asked why the quantity listed on a special order PO is not included on the on PO quantity for your items. This is due to the nature of special orders. They are specific to a sales order and customer. So when they're listed on a PO, it's not for your main stock, since it's going to be shipped to the customer once it arrives to your warehouse. And if you're utilizing the option to include on PO in your availability for your items calculation from configuration management, adding special order PO quantities to your on PO would actually throw off your item availability numbers. So adding any additional items to the special order PO will not affect your on PO quantities, because anything that's listed on a special order PO will be ignored for the on PO quantity. And then on the same topic, they also asked, is there a way to combine dropship and special order items on the same purchase order? There isn't a way, or is not a way, to combine dropship and special order due to the warehouse restrictions and the need to have different ship to locations, whether you're drop shipping or special ordering for a customer. So one PO can only have one ship to location. A special order PO is received into your physical warehouse with its own ship to location, while a dropship purchase order is sent directly to your customer location, which is a completely different ship to location. This means each have their own unique ship to location, so they need to have their own purchase order related to them. And then let's take a look at all the differences between special order and dropship. So for drop shipments, there is no inventory receipt, no warehouse to be shipped to. It's going to be shipped directly to your customer. So when you create a dropship PO, the customer ship to location is copied into the purchase order ship to location. It's based on one customer sales order, and again, the customer info is shared. And then when you invoice that dropship PO, that is what sets the cost of goods sold. So your cost of goods sold is accumulated at the time that you create that purchase invoice. Now you will see the cost of goods sold amount on your sales invoice based on the amount invoiced for the dropship PO. But again, it's accounted for on the purchase invoice. And then also for drop shipments, if you're utilizing lot serial numbers, you can do number one invoice for dropship only products, but you can't do other ones. So if it is a dropship only product and you needed to track a number, it would only be number one invoice because you don't know that lot or serial number until you receive the invoice from your vendor. So for special orders, you do have an inventory receipt, so you are receiving it into your actual warehouse. A lot of times customers will break out the special order items into their own special order warehouse. Again, that's just to keep everything separate. Yes, it is being received into your physical warehouse, but most likely you have a different section in your warehouse for these orders. And so we recommend creating a special order warehouse specifically for this purpose. A lot of times special orders are cross-docked or repacked. So what that means is you receive that stock, you take it out of the package from your vendor, and then you repackage it as if it came from you. You can have multiple customer orders on a special order PO. That's due to the fact that it's being shipped to your warehouse. Your customer info is kept private, again, because it's being shipped to your warehouse. And the cost of goods sold amount used on the sales invoice is based on the specific cost method you have for that item. So it's not going to be specific to the purchase invoice. It's going to be like, let's say if this special order item is average cost, it'll be the average cost at the time you create that sales invoice. If you have FIFO, it'll be the first layer available. And then for special orders, you can use the full lot serial number functionality. All right, and then on to reports. So we had a couple of questions about reports, so I'm going to cover some of the most common questions that we come across. In configuration management, you can select which forms to print from the sales order print icons, a default message template to use when emailing said forms, whether the forms would be previewed by default, or also emailed. And then while we're in Configuration Manager, we're going to go through adding report filters as well. All right, so let's get into Acctivate. We're going to go back into Configuration Management, and we're going to take a look at where we can set those default forms. So that's going to be under Sales Orders and Forms. So you can set that default report. So let's say you don't use kits. So you're not going to need to print the pick ticket with components by default, and you want to be able to quickly print a pick ticket without components. You would set the pick ticket to just the standard pick ticket. And this will be the report that prints whenever you click the pick ticket icon on the sales order window. If you have message templates for sales orders, you could set a default message template. I don't believe I have any right now. I reloaded my demo data not too long ago, so it removed some of them. But you can set up message templates based on specific documents like sales order or sales invoice, and then you can set those default message templates. So when you click email order, it will pull up that message template already. You don't have to select it. And then this preview checkbox, that means that whenever you go to print the report, you want it to preview by default. You don't want to have to check that box or it to go to your printer automatically. And the same goes for email. This will automatically check that email. So when you're sending or when you're creating that sales invoice and you want to send an email, you can just have that email by default. All right, and to add filters to reports, that's done in your report catalog in configuration management. So reports, report catalog. A common filter I've been getting asked to add in implementation lately is to add transaction type to the inventory ledger report, or even lot numbers to the inventory ledger report if you wanted to filter on a specific lot number. Maybe if you're using that in conjunction with track and trace or something. So that report is in the inventory transactions, inventory ledger. Click edit and then make selection prompts active. So what you can do is go ahead and select the field by clicking this browse button, expand inventory transaction detail, and then select transaction type. Now when you do that, it's going to go ahead and default the type of field to what it is in the database, as well as the prompt. And in version 10.3, that prompt will be title case with spaces in between the words, so you don't have to manually do that. We can close Configuration Manager. And another question that came in is due to the way reports are exported. So you can choose the file type to export the report, but some options will export in a way that makes it difficult to reformat or use functions in Excel. So you can export as PDF, Word doc, Excel, as well as some other types like RPT. If you do have crystal reports, you can export the RPT file to modify. So let's get back into Acctivate and take a look at the ledger report we just added the filter to. So you can see how that filter works and how to export the different formats. So we'll go to Reports, Inventory Management, Transactions, Ledger. Now the ledger does require a beginning date, so we just want to look at this year. And we want to restrict transactions to only receipts. So we'll do equal to R for receipt. We do have an entire code list on our help site if you have a question on what transaction types should be, whether it's R, S, L, A, all that good stuff. And then if we hit preview, it's going to show us receipts between 1/1/17 and today. And so to export it, we click this export button. And we have, these are all the different file types. You could do crystal reports, PDF, CSV, Excel, the older versions, Excel data only. The data only is going to export it in a way that's easier to reformat in Excel. If you don't use the data only, it'll export and it'll look exactly like you see it on screen in the report preview. Then you also have Microsoft Word, rich text format, web page, and XML. So let's take a look at data only. And I'm going to put it on my desktop. Save. And if I go to my desktop and open this file, you can see that it exports in a more legible way if you're going to be filtering or doing anything to this data. Now the headers did export a little wonky, and that's because of the way that the other fields came over, because we've got product ID, warehouse are both in the same column, so that pushes them over to the right a little bit. But you can move those over, but you could see that the dates and the values are all in the same column, so that'll make it a little bit easier for you to reformat and modify the data. So if we get back into Acctivate and we export just a regular workbook, you can see that this exports exactly how it looks in Acctivate. And so it can sometimes make it a little difficult whenever you're using formulas. Of course, you can use the formulas, but see how it's like merge and centered? You would have to go through and select each section instead of selecting like this whole thing. So the data only gives you the ability to select, that whole column instead of having to go through piece by piece and grab each section, because you'd have to like hold the control key down and, grab the section one by one. So it might be better for you to export as data only if you're going to be reformatting stuff. And then as always, you have the ability to do Excel queries. So you could take that one step further and pull straight from the database, and that'll be exactly as you need it to maybe filter or modify stuff using pivot tables. You could do that through an Excel query instead of exporting a report. All right, so let's take a look at some of the questions that came through. Okay, so one of the questions is, when we freeze a count sheet, will any sales that transpire during the freeze get adjusted by Acctivate automatically after the count is entered and posted? So once you print a count sheet, that freezes the quantity on hand as of that moment. Make sure that you actually go in and halt transactions that are occurring during that time, because the freeze count is a snapshot of that exact moment when you print that count sheet. And so when you post the count, you need to be aware that that count needs to include anything that's getting ready to be shipped or maybe somebody did process an invoice after you created that count, you would need to make sure to include that quantity in the on-hand quantity that you're counting. Okay, what is the best way to replenish your stock? Using what reports, and how does Acctivate calculate the minimum maximum recommendations to avoid surges for one-time sales? So the best way to replenish stock is to use your minimum max stock quantities. Those are manually entered quantities, so you would have to use a report to create those minimum maximum stock quantities. And you might want to use a demand-based report in case your business is seasonal. And then once you have those min-max quantities set, you would use the reorder wizard to replenish stock, because that gives you the ability to create bulk purchase orders based on your actual demand and your availability of your items. And Order Manager is available in version 10.3, which is now available on our help site. So let's take this moment to go ahead and show you where to find that. So you go to help.acctivate.com, click on Downloads, and you can click on this to see the release notes for 10.3. And if you scroll down, we've got the update for 10.3. If you are running version 10.2, then you would use the update link. And if you're on any version earlier than 10.2, you would need to use the cumulative link. And then the new install, if you haven't installed Acctivate yet, would be this new install. And we've got it broken out by QuickBooks, Sima, and Intact, which are the 3 accounting systems that we integrate with. And we've combined the QuickBooks into one version instead of having it broken out based on your QuickBooks locale. And then down here, we do have a 10.3 workstation install. That only needs to be run if you need to install it on a new workstation. Okay, what is the core idea of special order? Why would we start using special order? Would it be a time saver? So special order allows the vendor PO to be created from the sales order, and also when you receive from a special order, it will automatically update the related sales order to schedule the quantity that's been received once it's been received into stock through Acctivate. If you're using lot serial numbers, the lot serial numbers received on that special order receipt will also be selected for the sales order. So when you're ready to invoice, you really just have to open the sales order and click create invoice, and you're good to go. A lot of customers that use special order, they have special order only products. So what this means is they don't stock this in their day-to-day business because maybe their customers don't order it enough for them to have stock on hand. They would do special order only and only stock it when a customer orders it. So a customer's order would prompt them to create that special order PO. So yes, special order would be a time saver because again, that receipt is going to be related to that order detail line and update it once you receive it into stock. Dropship is specifically if you're ordering products from your vendor that go directly to your customer. Using the purchasing wizard would give you the ability to create those linked purchase orders for dropship items. What is the biggest time saver that Acctivate implemented in version 10.3? I would definitely say the major changes would be the inventory assemblies. So now you can create inventory assemblies from the sales orders as well as based on inventory requirements. Instead of having to create them manually one by one, you can now do it by checking those boxes on the assemblies window. Also, the Crystal Reports preview window has been updated, and you can apply open or unapplied payments and credits on the customer record from QuickBooks whenever you're creating invoices in Acctivate. I'll show you that here real quick. I'm going to override this to be scheduled. And if you click that credits tab, they have a credit that's been unapplied for $64.95, and they also have a payment that is not applied. And you can see the memo over here, it's a deposit for December order. So that would be a way to do customer deposits and apply that payment to the invoice whenever you release it, if you didn't want to go through the customer deposit process and Acctivate. Is there a way to edit the quantity when building an assembly? Yes, that's where you saw that warning whenever I was creating that assembly session earlier. So I don't have any that have, I don't know if I can get it to do the warning if it's not suggesting anything. But earlier when we did coffee French roast, it was suggesting 149. I changed that to 130 over here in the build quantity. And that is where you would see that you could adjust it. This build quantity is what's going to be the build quantity on the assembly session. And then earlier in the demonstration, when I changed that, it changed the build quantity to be red because it was below the suggested quantity. And there was also a warning that showed up here on the left-hand side. Okay, how do you clear out old dropship items out of the dropship PO wizard? There's not really a way to quickly clear that out because Acctivate is going to expect that if an item is marked as D or S, that there needs to be a PO created for it unless that order has been marked as complete or canceled. So if you have these old lines, then you either need to complete that sales order to mark all those lines as complete, or change the line type from D to P and then ship from inventory, or remove those items altogether from that sales order. It just depends on the scenario. Because again, Activate's going to assume that you need a PO if you've marked something as D and that line has not been completed. All right, it looks like that's all the questions that we have today. So again, if you have any questions while you're working through Acctivate, feel free to check the help site, help.acctivate.com. And then also, if you hit, I believe it's F1 while you're inside of Acctivate, it will actually open an article related specifically to the window that you have open. I hope you got some good information out of this webinar, and thanks for spending some time with us with your afternoon today. Have a great day.